The elevator's brass buttons blurred as my vision tunneled. Room 1247. The penthouse suite I'd booked for Dad's 60th birthday celebration, complete with champagne service and the city view he'd always dreamed of. The concierge's words still rang in my ears. "I'm sorry, miss, but the reservation was canceled this morning. Your father called personally." My fingers went numb around the hotel receipt. $3,200 for a weekend that would never happen. Behind me, 47 relatives milled in the lobby, dressed in their finest clothes, carrying wrapped gifts, checking their watches. They'd driven hours to be here. Some had flown in from 3 states away. The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding, mocking the hollow sensation spreading through my chest. My name is Bailey. I'm 28 and a marketing director. This is the story of how I made my father understand the true weight of silence. For 6 months, I'd planned this celebration. Dad's milestone birthday deserved something special. The man who'd built his construction empire from nothing, who'd taught me that showing up meant everything. I'd coordinated with my stepmother, sent save the dates to distant cousins, arranged catering for his favorite foods. Every detail crafted around the words he'd repeated my entire life. Family first, always. The hotel manager appeared, clipboard in hand, apology already forming on her lips. "Miss Chen, we received the cancellation at 7 a.m. Your father was quite insistent that the event was no longer necessary." My stepmother, Sarah, emerged from the crowd, her face tight with confusion. "Bailey, what's happening?" "Uncle Robert just drove 4 hours with Grandma Emma. She's 85 and hasn't been out of the house in months." I watched my grandmother through the glass doors, being helped from a wheelchair van, her best purple dress carefully arranged, her hands clutching the photo album she'd spent weeks preparing. Pictures of Dad as a boy, his first construction job, family moments spanning decades. The concierge cleared her throat. "There is a message." She handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Dad's harsh scrawl. "Bailey, real families don't need expensive parties to prove love. This was always about your ego, not mine. Don't contact me until you understand what really matters. Dad." The paper crinkled in my trembling hands. Around me, relatives began to understand. Voices rose in confusion, disappointment, anger. Children who'd been promised cake and games started to cry. My cousin Marcus approached with concern etched across his face. "Bae, what's going on? Mom made her famous apple pie. It took her all day yesterday." I could have screamed, could have called Dad right there, demanded explanations while everyone watched, could have salvaged something from the wreckage, maybe moved the party to someone's backyard, turned catastrophe into redemption. Instead, I folded the letter precisely in half. "There's been a change of plans," I announced, my voice carrying across the marble lobby. "But we're still celebrating." The community center down the street has space. "Sarah, can you help me coordinate?" For the next 4 hours, I orchestrated the perfect backup celebration. We moved decorations, relocated catering, transformed a potential disaster into a beautiful family gathering. Everyone commented on how well I handled the crisis, how gracefully I adapted. Not once did I mention that the guest of honor had sabotaged his own party. When people asked where Dad was, I simply said, he couldn't make it. The truth would come later, in private conversations with family members who deserved to know. Not as explosive revelation, but as quiet fact-sharing. The story spread organically. How I'd spent months planning, how relatives had traveled cross-country, how an 85-year-old woman had prepared a photo album that went unseen. Sarah, still processing her own shock, shared details with her sister, who mentioned it to Dad's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, during their weekly grocery run. By Tuesday, my phone started buzzing with messages from Dad's friends and business associates, people who'd heard fragments of the story and wanted the full picture. I answered every call with calm professionalism, recounting exactly what had happened without editorial commentary. "I understand there was a misunderstanding about your father's party," his golf partner Jim said during one call. "No misunderstanding," I replied evenly. He canceled it himself Saturday morning. 47 family members had already arrived. The silence on the line stretched long enough for Jim to draw his own conclusions. Dad's first call came Wednesday evening. I was in my apartment reviewing client presentations when his name appeared on my screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. Bailey, we need to talk. People are getting the wrong idea about what happened. Call me back. I deleted the message without saving it. Thursday brought 3 more calls, each voicemail progressively more agitated. Friday, he showed up at my office building, waiting in the parking garage. Through my 10th floor window, I watched him pace beside his truck, checking his phone, looking up at the building. He'd gotten my work address the same way he'd obtained most information over the years, by calling Sarah, who still believed in fixing family problems through forced communication. That evening, I gathered my things and headed to the building's back exit to avoid the confrontation waiting in the parking garage. Saturday morning, Sarah called, her voice strained. Bailey, your father is struggling. He's been asking everyone about the party, trying to explain himself. Maybe you could... What would you like me to do? I asked gently. Talk to him? Let him explain? Sarah, he canceled his own birthday party after I spent 6 months planning it. 47 people watched me scramble to fix what he destroyed. What explanation changes that? She was quiet for a long moment. He says it got out of hand, that it wasn't what he wanted. Then he should have said something during the 6 months I was organizing it. He was included in every decision. That afternoon, I went grocery shopping and ran into Mrs. Patterson from Dad's neighborhood. She'd always been fond of him, often praising his work ethic and family values. Bailey, dear, I heard about the birthday party situation. Such a shame. Your poor grandmother had been so excited to see everyone. I nodded. It was disappointing for the family. 47 people, I heard, and after all your planning? 6 months of coordination, I confirmed. But we made it work. The family still had a wonderful time celebrating together. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted. The way people's faces change when they realize someone they respected has revealed a troubling character flaw. By Sunday, Dad's messages had shifted tone entirely. Bailey, I made a mistake. I was overwhelmed and handled it wrong. Call me back, please. Monday. People are taking this the wrong way. You're making me look like a villain. Tuesday. This is getting out of hand. You need to fix this. Wednesday. I'm your father. You owe me the respect of a conversation. Thursday. Silence. Later that Friday afternoon, as I returned from work, I found him sitting on my apartment building's front steps. He looked older somehow, his shoulders curved inward. The confident posture I'd always associated with his presence had collapsed. Sarah had given him my address too, I realized. Another attempt at family intervention. Bailey. He stood as I approached. We have to talk. I paused at the building's entrance, key in hand. About what? About this campaign you're running against me. Campaign? I turned to face him fully. I haven't campaigned anything, Dad. I've just answered questions truthfully when people asked. His jaw tightened. You know what you're doing. Telling everyone about the party, making me look. Making you look like what? I interrupted quietly. Like someone who canceled his own birthday celebration after his daughter spent 6 months planning it? Like someone who left 47 family members standing in a hotel lobby with gifts and nowhere to go. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in my life, my father, the man who'd always had an answer for everything, had nothing to say. I didn't ask people to take sides, Dad. I didn't tell them to be disappointed in you. I just told them what happened when they asked. The rest was their own conclusion. I turned back to the door. Bailey, wait. His voice cracked. I was wrong. I panicked. The party felt too big, too much attention, and I handled it terribly. But this silence between us, it's killing me. I looked at him over my shoulder. You taught me that actions have consequences, that showing up matters, that family comes first. I paused. 47 people showed up for you. You didn't show up for them, or for me. I know I messed up, but can't we fix this? Fix what exactly? The fact that your business partners now know you abandoned your own birthday party, the fact that your neighbors understand you left your elderly mother sitting in a hotel lobby with a photo album she'd spent weeks preparing, the fact that your granddaughter asked why Grandpa didn't want to see her, each word landed with surgical precision. I wasn't shouting, wasn't emotional, I was simply stating facts. You wanted to teach me about what really matters, I continued. Consider the lesson delivered. I walked into the building and let the door close behind me. Through the glass, I watched him stand there for several minutes, staring at the space where I'd been. His reflection looked small against the building's facade. That night, I received one final voicemail. Bailey, I understand if you don't want to talk to me right now. I understand why everyone's upset. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm going to have to live with losing your respect and everyone else's. But I want you to know I'm proud of how you handled everything, how you took care of the family when I let them down. You showed more grace in one day than I've shown in years. I love you, and I hope someday you can forgive me. I saved that message. 2 months later, Sarah called to tell me Dad had signed up for therapy. He keeps talking about earning back trust, she said. Not just yours, everyone's. He's starting to understand that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you maintain. Over the following weeks, I received a handwritten letter. Not a text, not a voicemail, but careful cursive on his personal stationery. Dear Bailey, I've been thinking about the birthday party every day. Not about the embarrassment or the family drama, but about what I destroyed. You spent 6 months creating something beautiful for me, and I threw it away in a moment of panic and pride. I don't know if I can earn your forgiveness, but I want to try earning the right to ask for it. I'm in counseling now, learning about the difference between control and care. Learning that love isn't something you command, it's something you protect. I missed my 60th birthday, but I hope I haven't missed my chance to be the father you deserved all along. With love and regret, Dad. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer with his final voicemail. Silence, I learned, isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of choice. For years, I'd filled the spaces between us with explanations, apologies, attempts to bridge gaps he kept creating. The birthday party became the moment I stopped building bridges to someone who kept burning them down. But silence also leaves room for growth, space for someone to hear their own actions echoing back, room for accountability to take root. 3 months after receiving his letter, Dad texted a simple question. Would you be willing to have coffee sometime? No agenda, no timeline, just when you're ready. I stared at the message for 2 days before responding. Saturday morning, the coffee shop on 5th Street, 1 hour. That Saturday morning, we sat across from each other at a small table by the window. He looked nervous, older, more careful with his words than I'd ever seen him. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. I just wanted to say in person that I understand what I cost us. Not just the party, the trust. I nodded. It wasn't about the money or the embarrassment, Dad. It was about feeling like my effort didn't matter to you. It mattered more than you know. That's why I panicked. Seeing how much love you'd put into planning it, how many people were coming because they care about our family, it felt bigger than I deserved. We talked for exactly 1 hour. No dramatic reconciliation, no immediate healing, but something quieter. Acknowledgement, understanding. The beginning of a conversation that would take time to finish. As we parted ways in the parking lot, he said, "Thank you for teaching me that love isn't about control. I wish I'd learned that lesson 30 years ago." You learned it now, I replied. That's what matters. Today, 6 months later, we have coffee every few weeks. Short conversations, careful trust, the slow rebuilding of something that was broken but not beyond repair. Sarah tells me he still talks about the birthday party in therapy, not as something that was done to him, but as something he did to himself and everyone who loved him. The party he canceled taught our entire family what really matters, not expensive celebrations or perfect moments, but the quiet choice to care for each other, even when, especially when, we mess up. That lesson was worth every moment of silence and every careful word that came after. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence in our kitchen. I froze in the doorway, my hand still clutching the college brochure I'd been excited to show my parents. Dad stood over Mom, his surgeon's hand wrapped around her throat, pinning her against the refrigerator. The family photos held by magnets trembled with each impact. His face, the same face that smiled in hospital charity photos, had transformed into something monstrous, veins pulsing at his temples as he screamed about a text message from a male colleague. "You lying to me," he hissed, his voice eerily controlled despite the violence in his hands. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see what you're doing?" Mom's eyes found mine over his shoulder. In that moment, something crystallized in my chest, a cold, clear purpose that would define the next 4 years of my life. My name is Natalie. I'm 18. And this is the story of how I weaponized the truth to destroy the monster living in our home. Our family looked perfect from the outside. Dad was Dr. Owen Parker, the respected surgeon who saved lives with his skilled hands. Mom was Victoria, the elegant wife who hosted dinner parties where everyone marveled at her grace. We lived in a colonial-style house with a perfectly manicured lawn in an upscale neighborhood where the neighbors smiled and waved, but never looked too closely. That night when I was 14 changed everything. I'd seen Dad's anger before, the tightening around his eyes when Mom laughed too loudly at dinner, the way his fingers would drum against his thigh when she spent too long talking to another man. But seeing his hands on her throat unlocked something in me. Not just fear, but a cold, calculating fury. "Stop!" I screamed, hurling myself between them. "Don't touch her!" Dad looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, his daughter suddenly not a child but an obstacle. Something dark and unfamiliar crossed his face. "This doesn't concern you," he said, his voice regaining its professional smoothness. "Go to your room." "I'm not leaving her," I replied, my voice shaking but determined. I turned to Mom. "Are you okay?" She nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving Dad's face, monitoring for danger like prey watching a predator. "Your mother and I are having a discussion," he said, "adult matters that you don't understand." "I understand enough," I replied. "I understand you're hurting her." Something shifted in his expression, uncertainty perhaps or calculation. This was new territory. His violence had never had a witness before, at least not one who confronted him. He stepped back, releasing Mom. "You're overreacting. Your mother and I had a disagreement. That's all." I looked at the kitchen, the toppled chair, the wine splattered across the wall, the red marks forming on Mom's throat. This wasn't a disagreement. "Natalie, please," Mom whispered. "It's fine. Go upstairs." "If you touch her again," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I'll tell everyone. The hospital, your colleagues, the neighbors, everyone." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No one would believe you." "I'm respected in this community. Your mother is emotional, prone to accidents, and you're just a child with an overactive imagination." He was right, and I knew it. His reputation was impeccable. Mom had spent years covering for him, making excuses for bruises and absences. Who would take my word against his? That night, I lay awake until dawn, my mind racing. If no one would believe me without proof, I would get proof. The next day, I emptied my savings account, $237 accumulated from birthdays and babysitting, and bought a small digital recorder. I hid it in the decorative bowl on the living room shelf between the dining room and kitchen where most of their discussions happened. Within a week, I had my first recording. Dad screaming accusations about Mom's supposed flirtation with a neighbor, the sound of a slap, Mom's quiet weeping. I transferred it to my computer, hidden in a folder disguised as school projects. One recording became 2, then 5, then dozens. A digital archive of horror, meticulously labeled with dates and brief descriptions. Kitchen, verbal abuse, re-dinner. Living room, physical, pushed against wall. Master bedroom, threats re-leaving. I kept the digital evidence encrypted and backed up to a password-protected cloud account Dad didn't know existed, disguised as study materials for AP classes he had no interest in. Even when he occasionally checked my computer, he never found the actual files hidden behind security measures that a technically unskilled surgeon wouldn't know how to breach. Alongside this growing library of evidence, I began researching domestic violence laws, restraining orders, divorce proceedings. I studied the statistics about how abusers escalate, how leaving is the most dangerous time. I found resources, support groups, shelters. I was preparing for war while still setting the dinner table each night, smiling at my father's colleagues at hospital functions, maintaining my perfect GPA. Mom noticed the change in me, a new stillness, a watchfulness. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she'd ask when we were alone. "I'm fine," I'd reply, the lie bitter on my tongue. I couldn't tell her what I was doing. She was too afraid, too conditioned to believe escape was impossible. And I feared what Dad might do if he discovered my evidence before I had enough. The recording device became my secret weapon, my insurance policy, my silent witness. Each night I would retrieve it, download the day's events, then place it back in its hiding spot, heart hammering with the fear of discovery. Sometimes the recordings contained nothing but normal household sounds. Other times, they captured the Jekyll and Hyde transformation that occurred when Dad thought no one was watching. As my evidence archive grew, I invested in a small nanny cam disguised as a smoke detector in the main living areas. Paid for with cash to leave no trace, I'd rotate memory cards weekly, building a library of both audio and visual proof that would be impossible to dismiss as misunderstandings. One night, 2 years into my evidence collection, I nearly got caught. I was retrieving the recorder when Dad came home unexpectedly. I barely had time to slip it into my pocket before he walked into the living room. "What are you doing down here so late?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Getting water," I said, holding up the glass I'd grabbed as cover. "I was studying late." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Your mother tells me you're applying to colleges on the East Coast." My heart stuttered. I'd been careful to only research schools far away on library computers, never at home. "Just exploring options," I said carefully. "I think that's unwise," he replied, loosening his tie. "You should stay closer to home. UW has an excellent program, and you could live here, save money." The thought of remaining under his roof made my stomach clench. "I want to experience something different," I said, trying to keep my voice light. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "We'll discuss it. Your mother and I will make the final decision, of course." In that moment, I realized he had no intention of ever letting either of us go. We weren't family to him. We were possessions. That night, I added a new recording to my collection. After he thought I'd gone to bed, he cornered Mom in their bedroom. "You've been encouraging her," he accused, filling her head with ideas about leaving. "Oh, and she's 17, Mom replied, her voice placating. "Of course she's thinking about college." The sound of impact made me flinch even through my headphones. "She stays close to home," he hissed. "I won't have my daughter across the country where anyone could influence her, where she could tell stories." His words confirmed what I'd suspected. He knew, on some level, that I was a threat, that I saw through him. The next day, I accelerated my plans. I graduated high school a year early through accelerated courses, my college applications completed in secret. I received a full scholarship to a university across the country but deferred my acceptance. I couldn't leave yet. The evidence was substantial but not yet overwhelming. And more importantly, Mom wasn't ready. I got her a burner phone, showed her how to use it, made her memorize the number for the domestic violence hotline. Small steps toward a future she couldn't yet imagine. I took a job at a local coffee shop, saving every penny in an account Dad didn't know about. Escape money. "You should be focusing on college," Mom said one day as I was leaving for my shift. "Not working at that place." "I like it," I lied. "It's good experience." She studied my face, seeing more than I realized. "You're planning something." I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Natalie." she whispered, glancing nervously toward Dad's study. "Whatever you're thinking, don't. He'll never let us go. He'll find us." "He won't," I promised. "But we need to be ready first." She shook her head, fear clouding her eyes. "You don't understand. I tried once before you were born. The things he did, I can't go through that again." The revelation stunned me. I'd never known she'd attempted to leave. "What happened?" "He tracked me to my sister's house, convinced everyone I was having a nervous breakdown, that I needed help. He's a doctor, Natalie. Who would question him?" Her hands trembled. "He kept me sedated for weeks. By the time I could think clearly again, my sister wouldn't even take my calls. He isolates, then controls. That's what he does." The information reframed everything. This wasn't just about gathering evidence anymore. It was about creating a safety net so robust that Dad's manipulation couldn't penetrate it. 3 months later, the opportunity came. Dad was scheduled for a medical conference in Boston, 4 days away from home, the longest he'd been gone in years. The morning after he left, I sat Mom down at the kitchen table. "We need to talk," I said, opening my laptop. "And you need to see something." I showed her selected clips from my recordings, enough to demonstrate the pattern, but not so much that she'd be overwhelmed. I watched her face as she heard her own voice begging, saw her own body crumpling under his assault. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. "Almost 3 years," I admitted. "I have hundreds of hours, photos of injuries, documentation of financial abuse, everything." She stared at me. This daughter she thought she knew. "Why?" "Because someday you'll be ready to leave. And when that day comes, I want to make sure he can never hurt you again." She closed the laptop, her hands steady for the first time in years. What if that day is today? My heart leapt. "Are you serious?" She nodded slowly. "Show me the plan I know you have." I outlined everything. The apartment I'd secured in a town 2 hours away, paid for 3 months in advance. The new phones, the bank account with nearly $15,000 saved, the restraining order paperwork, already filled out, needing only her signature and the evidence we would attach. The appointment with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, scheduled for the following day. The apartment lease was in the name of my manager at the coffee shop, a former social worker who recognized the signs of abuse and offered to help us establish our first safe haven. This arrangement gave us legal housing while maintaining the secrecy of our location. "You've thought of everything," she said, wonder in her voice. "Not everything," I admitted. "He'll still fight. He'll still try to control the narrative, but we have something he doesn't expect." "What's that?" "The truth," I said simply, "and now we have proof to back it up." We packed only essentials and disappeared that night. Dad returned early from his conference when we didn't answer his calls. He came home to an empty house and a notice of emergency restraining order taped to the door. What followed was the war I'd been preparing for. Dad did exactly what Mom had predicted, told everyone she was unstable, that she'd poisoned my mind against him, that we needed help. He called hospitals, police stations, friends, family, spinning his doctor's web of concern and authority. But this time, we were ready. For every lie he told, we had truth. For every character witness he presented, we had audio and video evidence. For every medical professional he attempted to influence, we had documentation of injuries stretching back years. The judge, visibly disturbed by our evidence, fast-tracked our protection order hearing. Though Dad's lawyer attempted numerous delays, the overwhelming documentation expedited what typically takes a year or more into 6 months of intense legal battles that ended with our complete separation from him. 3 weeks after we left, I faced him across a courtroom during the restraining order hearing. He looked smaller somehow, his confident surgeon's posture diminished by confusion and rage. He couldn't understand how his carefully constructed world had collapsed so completely. "Natalie," he said when he saw me in the hallway, his voice softening to the tone he used when playing the concerned father. "This has gone far enough. Your mother needs help, not this circus." I met his eyes steadily. "We both know what she needs, Dad. She needs freedom from you. You've been manipulated, he insisted, stepping toward me. Whatever you think you know— I know everything, I interrupted, holding up my phone. Every word, every threat, every time you put your hands on her. I've been recording you for 3 years. The color drained from his face. In that moment, he finally saw me, not as his obedient daughter, but as the architect of his downfall. The judge made the restraining order permanent. The hospital placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. Former friends stopped returning his calls as rumors, backed by concrete evidence, spread through their social circle. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Mom received the house, which we sold, half his retirement accounts, and substantial alimony. Dad lost his position at the hospital when a video of him threatening to kill Mom made its way to the medical board. I finally enrolled in college, not across the country as originally planned, but close enough to visit Mom regularly in her new apartment. She was working full-time at the library now, making friends, even tentatively beginning to date. One evening, as we shared dinner at her place, she asked the question I'd been expecting for months. Why didn't you just leave when you got your scholarship? You could have escaped without me. I considered how to explain something that had never required explanation in my own mind. Because you're my mother, I said simply, and because he was wrong about you. You're not weak or worthless or any of the things he said. You were trapped, not just by him, but by a system that makes it almost impossible for women to escape men like him. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I should have been the one protecting you. You did, I told her. Every time you drew his anger to keep it from falling on me. Every time you taught me to be strong in ways you didn't even realize. I smiled. We protected each other, and now we're free. That night, as I drove back to my dorm, I thought about the recordings still stored on my laptop. Nearly 3 years of documented abuse, a digital record of horror I had no reason to keep now that the legal proceedings were complete. When I reached my room, I transferred everything to an external drive, then systematically deleted each file from my computer. The physical drive I placed in a small, fireproof box, locked with a key I wear around my neck. Not as a reminder of trauma, but as evidence of survival. Proof that sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't about destroying your enemy, but about rescuing yourself from their destruction. Dad still lives in the same town, his reputation and career in tatters. Sometimes I see him from a distance, looking older, diminished. I feel nothing but a distant pity. The monster who once loomed so large in our lives has been reduced to an aging man with no power over us. The real victory wasn't in his downfall, though that was necessary. It was in watching Mom laugh without looking over her shoulder, in seeing her stand straight and speak her mind without flinching, in knowing that the prison of fear he built around us has crumbled to dust. People ask if I hate him. The truth is more complicated. Hate requires energy I'm no longer willing to spend on him. Instead, I've redirected that energy toward helping others. My psychology major has a focus on trauma recovery. I volunteer at the same domestic violence organization that helped us plan our escape. Sometimes the women I work with ask how I can remain so calm in the face of their stories, so steady when they describe abuse that mirrors what I witnessed. I tell them the truth, that bearing witness to another's pain is an honor, not a burden. That helping someone find their path to freedom is the most powerful antidote to the helplessness I once felt. My father took so much from us over the years: safety, peace, dignity. But in the end, we took something far more valuable from him: his power, not through violence or threats, but through truth. The systematic, meticulous documentation of his true nature became the weapon that finally set us free. Some scars never fully heal. Mom still startles at loud noises. I still wake sometimes from nightmares where I'm searching desperately for my recorder while something terrible happens in the next room. But we're healing day by day in the sunshine that floods the rooms where no one yells, where no one hides bruises, where the doors lock from the inside to keep danger out, not to trap us within. This is what victory looks like. Not revenge, but recovery. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Building something new and beautiful from the wreckage of what was destroyed. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in the lavish restaurant as Morgan's words echoed across our table. Oh my, Natalie is from a single-parent family? How commendable that you've managed to accomplish anything at all. My fingers clenched around my water glass as Brian's mother continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy while her eyes remained cold. Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, Dating someone like you would be so complicated for Brian. I glanced at Brian, my blind date and apparent heir to Sunrise Bank, who sat smugly beside his mother, nodding in agreement. The restaurant's ambient noise faded away as I watched them discuss my unfortunate background as if I weren't sitting right across from them, as if my mother weren't sitting right beside me, her back perfectly straight, her expression carefully controlled. Presumptuous for commoners to think they could marry into a family like ours. Brian's father. Richard muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. Even if you try to bother us, it won't hurt you much since it's your money. Morgan added with a dismissive wave. Useless, poor people with low backgrounds. As I did the final check, confirming that yes, these people had invited us here specifically to humiliate us, I asked, "You're saying we should close our account with your bank, right? Please go ahead." They smiled with disdain, eyes filled with contempt as they stared at us. I decided it was time to give those who judge others by their background a taste of their own medicine. With that thought, I smiled. My name is Natalie. I'm 29 and a marketing executive. This is the story of how I made a family of elitists lose everything they valued. I never expected to be ambushed like this. The blind date with Brian had been uncomfortable enough. His condescending attitude when he learned I worked for a major corporation rather than a prestigious financial institution, his constant self-aggrandizement, his dismissive glances. But when he suggested meeting our parents, I'd foolishly agreed, thinking it would be an easy way to end things with witnesses present. Maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before, Mom had suggested when I'd told her about Brian's behavior. The way he spoke was weird, Mom, like I was beneath him somehow. Well, his parents will be there, right? Just say no if it doesn't feel right. I'll be there too. I'd apologized for dragging her into this, but she'd just laughed. It's okay. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank. If only we'd known what they'd planned. When we arrived at the restaurant, our table was ready, but Brian's family was late. Deliberately, I realized later, to establish dominance. Richard offered no genuine apology for their tardiness, and Morgan immediately began her attack. So where is your father? Is he coming later? I looked at Brian, who just smirked dismissively. I'd already told him during our date that my father had passed away when I was young. They knew. This was calculated. Mom responded with remarkable composure. My husband passed away from illness when Natalie was young, so today I'm here as her mother. That's when Morgan had raised her voice in that exaggerated manner, making sure nearby tables could hear. Oh my, Natalie is from a single-parent family. Each comment cut deeper as they continued their performance. The worst part wasn't their cruelty, it was how rehearsed it felt, as if humiliating people they deemed socially inferior was a family pastime. I'm not really into strong-willed women. Brian interjected when I defended myself, his tone suggesting I should be grateful he'd considered me at all. That's when Mom's patience finally broke. In 29 years, I'd rarely heard her speak so sternly. Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you? Please stop with the accusations. Richard responded with mock offense. It was just a little teasing, right? No one feels good being mocked, and all your remarks are condescending. Mom replied. We have no intention of listening to this any further. Brian's family looked displeased at Mom's clear statement. Presumptuous for commoners, Richard muttered. Commoners, huh? Indeed, that may be the case, but this has made up my mind, Mom said. Brian's family looked briefly surprised, then burst into laughter, clearly thinking, "What could you possibly do?" Mom sighed and began to speak. "Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to entrust them to people like you." "Oh, really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much, right? It's probably insignificant," Morgan dismissed. "That's right. Even if you try to trouble us with your funds, it won't really affect us. Low-class poor people are not needed," Richard added. I realized that even Mom's last attempt at reconciliation was in vain. They continued to speak disdainfully, unaware of who they were insulting. I sighed and made the final confirmation. "We're closing our account, right?" "Please go ahead," they said in a mocking tone, their eyes filled with disdain, making me feel disgusted as they stared at us. That night, I made a call I hadn't expected to make for years. "Grandpa Oliver, it's Natalie. I need your help." "What's wrong, sweetheart?" His voice was alert despite the late hour. "It's about Sunrise Bank." A pause. "What happened?" I explained everything. The blind date, the family meeting, the deliberate humiliation. "They didn't know who you were?" His voice had changed, taking on the sharp edge I remembered from my childhood visits to his office. "Number? And they made it very clear what they think about single-parent families and people they consider beneath them." Another pause. Longer this time. "Come to my house tomorrow morning, both you and your mother." The next morning, Mom and I arrived at Grandpa Oliver's estate, ready to discuss our plan. As we sat in his study, I realized I had forgotten to mention something important. "Grandpa, I recorded our entire conversation at the restaurant. I had a feeling things might go south, so I started my voice recorder app before we even ordered drinks." He nodded approvingly. "Smart girl. That will be useful." 2 weeks passed. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from Brian, which I ignored and eventually blocked. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. "Grandpa Oliver wants us at Sunrise Bank tomorrow at 9 a.m., I told Mom that evening. "Are you sure about this, Natalie?" "They chose this fight, Mom. They just chose it with the wrong people." As instructed by Grandpa Oliver, Mom and I arrived at Sunrise Bank the following day at 9 a.m. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly when I gave my name. "Of course, Miss Parker. Please follow me to the executive conference room." When we entered, Brian's family was already there, looking pale and uncomfortable. Morgan stood up immediately and rushed over to bow deeply. I didn't acknowledge her apology. Instead, I just smiled and asked, "What exactly are you apologizing for?" Morgan bit her lip, trembling with anger and frustration. There were too many things they should apologize for, which probably made her feel overwhelmed. "This situation started because I said we would close our account," I continued. "Our account wasn't particularly large, and closing it wouldn't have caused much damage." I paused, letting the tension build. But Grandpa Oliver's case was different. The door opened and Oliver Parker walked in, his presence filling the room instantly. At 78, he still carried himself with the authority of someone who expected and received immediate respect. Grandpa Oliver managed the inheritance my dad left at Sunrise Bank for our benefit. He also had his own accounts there. If all accounts, including Grandpa's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7 million. Richard paled visibly. I didn't know Natalie was related to the former CEO. "That's no excuse," I said sharply. "Even if you didn't know, your prejudice against our family is your own fault." "You mean, if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently?" Mom asked quietly. "Hey, don't talk to Dad like that," Brian snapped. "It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandpa was the former CEO." "I don't have any obligation to tell a stranger like you that," I replied coolly. "Besides, you were the one who started it and made fun of us, remember?" Brian, unable to retort, narrowed his eyes in frustration. "You insulted me knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would close our account, you told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told." But it may be just that for you, but have you ever thought about the feelings of someone whose family has been insulted? Silence fell. Morgan was trembling, Richard was hanging his head, but Brian still seemed unconvinced, his face full of dissatisfaction. Getting all high and mighty just because people talk about you, he muttered. Grandpa Oliver's voice cut through the room like ice. Even after giving you a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves. It's not my fault, it's her. Watch your words, Grandpa Oliver warned. If you continue, you'll end up even more miserable. Brian, silenced by Oliver's words, glared at me again. Then, as if resigned, he burst out. No way! Who would think a single parent's relative was the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the family meeting just to mock us. Brian, be quiet, Oliver commanded, his gaze turning to Richard. I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I know his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO. That's ridiculous, over something like this? Richard started to protest, but sat down again under Oliver's glare. You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Oliver's voice was deadly calm. Though I'm retired, the board will decide if you have something to say. Say it to them. Remember, we recorded the previous conversation and this one. Don't forget that the voice recorder will serve as evidence. I took out a voice recorder and pressed play. The restaurant conversation filled the room, their contemptuous voices echoing off the walls. How dare you prepare something like that? It's unfair, Brian shouted. It was just a precaution, I replied. But remember, you forced me into this situation. Brian had nothing to say in return, and their faces turned ashen. Thank you, Oliver said to us. We'll handle it from here. Mom and I left, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting from my shoulders. In the end, Grandpa Oliver didn't transfer the funds, at least not officially. Richard was removed from his CEO position, and Brian was demoted. Seemingly unable to handle the blow to his pride, Brian resigned voluntarily. Grandpa Oliver's influence in the financial industry meant Brian would struggle to find work in the same field again. Richard seemed determined to work until retirement, but Grandpa said it would be tough for him, both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to wield power as the CEO's wife, apparently started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle, but her character likely made it hard for her to keep a job. I apologized to my friend who had set up the blind date. I'm really sorry about all this. It's okay. You didn't know, right? I only shared what happened with the friend who introduced me to Brian. She just heard about him through someone else and wasn't at fault. Mom had initially been concerned about being a single parent, but I reassured her. I'm happy now and can live thanks to the support I've received. When I told her that, she smiled and said, "Thank you." After everything was taken care of, Grandpa Oliver told us to come over to his house again sometime. I'm really grateful for his help in resolving the situation. It was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's okay. I have some good news, too. I've been promoted at work, something I earned through my own merit, not family connections. I'm not interested in dating right now, but I'm satisfied with my current life. I want to keep cherishing those who support me, and maybe someday I'll meet someone I really connect with. Someone who values people for who they are, not where they come from. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.